Hey guys, so the Elemental Shaman nerfs are finally here. And I do say finally here because a lot of us were expecting to see some nerfs for Elemental. We just weren't sure how they were going to approach it, and now we finally have our answer. Now, Elemental is one of the best performing specs on the beta, not just for Raid, but for Mythic Plus. But especially for Raid, Elemental is one of the biggest outliers from the rest of the pack. There's maybe one or two other specs that were also performing quite high, but Elemental was definitely on the upper level. Might have been the best spec in the game for a boss like Mythic Silken Court. Was performing extremely well on bosses like that and just in pure single target in general. And now these nerfs are definitely going to be bringing them back down in line. Mythic Plus is going to be a little bit more delicate to talk about because of how these nerfs have affected us. So with that being said, let's just kind of jump into it and comb through it together, and then we'll talk about it as we go. So we'll come back to these things at the top. These are the Stormbringer changes and the Farseer changes here at the top. We'll come back to those after we talk about the general elemental nerfs here. We'll actually start off with a buff here, though. We have a Lightning Bolt buff. Lightning Bolt was increased by 3%. 3% is a very small number, especially for something that wasn't doing that much damage before. But we will take anything we can get right now, and when it comes to these kind of changes. This actually was originally noted as a nerf as well, but then they flipped it around to being an increase. So kind of interesting. I guess they had gotten so used to writing reduced that they forgot to make this one increased at first. But lightning bolt damage slightly increased there. Lava burst damage reduced by 25%, pretty big number. Elemental blast reduced by 25%. Big number. Earthquake damage reduced 15%. Flame shock reduced 15%. Thunderstrike ward, well, something that had not been taken at all was increased by 150%. So just in general, so you're getting a sense of this, 150% of like about 1% damage overall does bring it to about 2.5%. I've been told this is actually an okay buff for something that is just 1-point talent, but it doesn't really interact with anything else. We'll see how this actually affects our talent choices, but I wouldn't get my hopes up just yet until we see some actual numbers to go along with it. Splintered Elements now grants 10% haste, was 20. They had just changed this from 10 to 20 not too long ago. It was in this expansion that they buffed it from 10 to 20, and they also nerfed the high end with multiple targets. So this will be the most nerfed state we've seen Splintered Elements in. So that will be interesting. It will still definitely be taken for AoE, or at least most likely, I think, will still be a prime pickup for AoE, but it definitely will sting a little bit, losing that 10% haste. We'll still be able to get to a maximum of 30% haste on 6 targets. We'll see how that goes overall. That's going to be something that we'll need to play test and mess around with for sure. Earthshock damage was increased by 25%, so that is interesting that they've buffed Earthshock and nerfed Elemental Blast, probably to try to keep them from getting too far apart, because as it had stood on beta, Elemental Blast was far and away better than Earthshock. There was no situation where you would ever consider taking Earthshock. I don't know if this does enough to change that. I don't think it does yet, but we'll just come down to testing and see what actually... how it all actually pans out. But right now, I don't think this will be enough to unseat Elemental Blast, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Power of the Maelstrom now has a 60% chance to trigger. It was 25%. This is an interesting buff because the problem with Power of the Maelstrom wasn't so much the chance of it triggering at this point. It was the fact that overloads just don't do a whole lot of damage. If you're not familiar with what Power of the Maelstrom does, Power of the Maelstrom... it gives you a chance that chance is going from 25% to 60% chance to cause your next lightning bolt or chain lightning to cast an additional elemental overload, guaranteeing you at least that one elemental overload from those casts. It can stack up to 2 times, but the chance of it happening was not really the issue, as I was saying. It is more of the fact that just overloads are just not very important anymore. We'll see how this affects anything. If you're playing a fire build and you take this, you'll probably have these charges like 100% of the time. So that might be something that's worth mentioning. But again, the overloads are just not that big of a damage source for us at the current moment. Liquid Magma Totem now has a 30-second cooldown, was 1 minute. This is actually a fairly big change. Liquid Magma Totem is one of the best ways to spread our flame shocks, and now having it be 30 seconds instead of 1 minute means we have more access to it. And beyond that, it's not actually going to be 30 seconds because of the talent of Totemic Surge. This actually brings it down to 24 seconds, and it might be enough to even consider not having to take Totemic Recall, because it won't work with Stone Bulwark Totem either, and just resetting a 24-second cooldown on a 2-minute cooldown might not be worth taking. It might still be worth taking for those double liquid magma totem pulls. If you're doing something like that, might be worth for that, but might not be. But 24-second, essentially 24-second liquid magma totem is going to be something that will make things a lot easier for flame shock spread from pack to pack, but it won't help you out from the initial flame shock dotting up when you first pull a pack, especially if there's 6+ targets. Still getting out 6 right away can still be challenging even with this this cooldown reduction. But definitely a welcome change for sure. Ice Fury damage increased by 85%. This basically takes Ice Fury damage and makes it about as strong as one of the following buffed Frost Shock charges. So this isn't like a huge damage increase. I know it says 85%, but it's not. It wasn't a whole lot of damage before, but it does bring it up to about a Frost Shock charge. Earthen Rage was increased by 60%. Again, kind of similar to Thunderstrike Ward. It's just going to completely depend on how strong these talents are when matched up against the other talents in that kind of row, because both of those are in the same kind of area here in this middle section. Thunderstrike Ward here, Earthen Rage right there, so literally on the same line. It really just comes down to how much interconnectivity you need from some of these other talents. Because these don't have any interactivity whatsoever with your other spells. They just give you procs of damage. So it really just comes down to how strongly they're tuned comparatively to the interactions of everything else. One thing about, I will just going back to Thunderstrike Ward, this just doesn't have a very good pathing option. So if you were thinking about taking this to path around something else, there's really nothing you're trying to avoid. Lightning Conduit giving you 8% nature damage, which both affects Flame Shock and Elemental Blast as well as Lightning Bolt. That's going to be really hard to say no to, especially in AoE. And then also maybe wanting to go around Eye of the Storm is probably not going to be a correct choice either. So I'm not sure what this will literally have to stand on its own 2 feet based on how it's tuned, and that kind of a similar situation for Earthen Rage, but it has at least a little bit more choices that you may want to go around things, but it's kind of hard to say at this moment. Again, both of these talents are really just, they do damage without any kind of interplay between anything else. It's really just going to come down to how that all lines up with tuning more than anything else across the entire spec. So we'll see how that goes. The additional Lava Burst from Primordial Wave now deal 50% of normal damage was 80%. So now our Lava Bursts from Primordial Wave are also going to be doing less damage, in addition to the fact that the the Lava Bursts themselves are doing less damage overall. So this is quite a dip, all things considered, between these two things to our Lava Burst damage and our additional Lava Bursts. So keep that in mind. I'm going to get a drink of water here because I've been talking straight for a while. All right. Resolved an issue causing Lava Bursts chance to trigger an increase when Searing Flames is talented. This is actually the biggest thing in the entire list of changes, because when you took Searing Flames, it was giving you way more Lava Surges. And I'm not just talking about like a little bit, a ton more Lava Surges. It was basically playing the exact same it does on live. And they had changed that, or had wanted to change that, going into this next expansion, but because Searing Flames was such an integral talent to any fire build, this is something that everyone has been taking, and there hasn't been too much messing around without this talent. So just to give you an idea of what this looks like with, well, we can show you with Searing Flames first, I guess. It doesn't really matter what we take, just to kind of get an idea of Searing Flames. Here we go, we'll do that. So, talenting back into Searing Flames here. We got some target dummies. Gonna spread our Flame Shocks around. And just kind of get going like a normal pull here. And as you can see, I'm getting a ton of extra Lava Surges. They're almost always happening. Don't even really have to think about it too much. Lava Surge is just constantly coming up. Even sometimes when I'm not even meaning to cast a Lava Surge proc, they're still coming up. So I'm getting a ton of Lava Surges, about like one every like, probably on average, maybe like one every 2 to 3 seconds, something like that. But that allows us to get a lot more Lava Burst cast out than what they had originally planned for us. So again, just a ton of Lava Burst. I always have them available to me, always active. So let's just get out of combat here for a second. And we can drop that talent the second we drop combat here. All right. So so we can look. We're not looking at damage right now because I'm obviously dropping other talents in order to get away from it. We're just going to look at how many Lava Surge procs I get now. So again, doing the same exact thing. I did proc Ascendance before, but that wasn't really what we were looking at. We were just looking at Lava Surges. So again, going to spread our Flame Shocks and get going. So we had one a moment ago. There's one right there. Still waiting. Still waiting. There's one. I'm waiting. Waiting a long time for this one. There's one. Waiting. Waiting. Still waiting. Oh, goodness. Still waiting on this one. This one's taking a little bit longer. There we go. There's one. And as you can see, my Flame Shocks are even falling off because I'm not getting nearly as many DREs because I'm not able to reset. I'm not able to reset the Flame Shocks from those DREs because I'm not casting nearly as many Lava Bursts. So that's going to make a huge difference on how it plays because now we're going to actually have to cast Chain Lightning, whereas before, if you had full spread of your Flame Shocks, you were almost never having to cast anything else other than Lava Burst. If you really wanted to, you could cast Chain Lightning, but Lava Burst was always an option because of how many Lava Surges we were getting. Without that increased proc rate off of Lava Surge, we're just going to be having to fill that in with a lot of Chain Lightnings. And as of right now, these changes have not gone live on the beta, which is why I had to do something weird like this and spec out of Searing Flames. So we really don't know where Ellie is going to end up in terms of its own playstyle, let alone tuning. So I'm a little sad that this got changed in the middle of a giant tuning pass to Elemental, because this alone completely changes the playstyle and might have been really all they needed to do from a AoE standpoint. Now, again, we were still doing extremely well in single target, so there was definitely nerfs that needed to happen on that side of things, but maybe they could have gone around doing it slightly differently with this change happening first. I would have just liked to have seen this happen before everything else had gotten changed, because this is going to feel like a double whammy. This change, along with all of these things up here, is going to be a huge hit to our damage in AoE and Mythic Plus. So it's going to be a completely new playstyle. A completely new playstyle when these changes go live, and we're going to have to completely rework how we do things. This might even lead to different talents that we talent into for Mythic Plus. This might lean into more of a lightning build style. Might want to be focusing more on, actually, because we're going to be forced to cast so many more Chain Lightnings, maybe we start leaning into that a little bit more. Maybe that Thunderstrike ward might actually become useful because we'll actually be casting Chain Lightnings. I mean, everything is kind of back on the table now. We've kind of reset our expectations for Elemental because of this one change, this one bug that was affecting us. Really resets the entire outlook on Elemental, even without all these other changes. So that being said, it's whenever these go live, it is a new dawn is rising for Elemental, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad. Probably not good, but there is, I will just say, the silver lining here, just to try to keep things at least somewhat positive, the silver lining here is that this could lead to better gameplay if you didn't enjoy just spamming out Lava Bursts and Elemental Blast and Earthquake, and that kind of being the extent of your gameplay. If you like having to cast Chain Lightning in AoE instead of just casting Lava Burst, this might be a better change overall, but I will say I don't think this should be the end of the tuning changes, because again, this will affect Elemental quite drastically. So this is going to take a lot more testing and hopefully a lot more tuning in the future. But just know that we're going to be seeing a very, very different Elemental whenever this does go live. So, moving on. We're not done yet. So, resolved an issue with Flash of Lightning not reducing the cooldown of Stone Bulwark Totem and Primordial Wave. This is something that is quite nice. Again, this does buff up the lightning side of the play because of this cooldown reduction. Also, Flash of Lightning is something you're basically taking all the time now, regardless of of build. So this is something that does make you want to lean into Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts a little bit more from a defensive angle, and that was something that was very good in Season 2. So it's good that these things will be affected, especially Stone Bulwark Totem. Primordial Wave is going to be very interesting because we didn't have a way to reduce Primordial Wave anymore after the removal of Rolling Magma. So having Lightning actually interact with that, Lightning spells, Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, interact with the cooldown reduction of Primordial Wave, which obviously casts Lava Burst. Kind of an interesting interplay there that we haven't gotten a chance to see really too much yet. So very interested to see how this affects things moving forward. I do think Primordial Wave will probably end up being something that we continue to see in Mythic Plus regardless of the build type you're looking at. If you're trying to make a Lightning build or not, Primordial Wave might kind of weasel its way in there because of things like Splintered Elements, even though it's in a nerf state. 30% haste that you can then get back quickly with like Chain Lightnings and Lightning Bolts might be interesting. We'll see how that works out. Resolved an issue causing Elemental Blast from fusion of elements to consume Magma Chamber. Just a little, just a fix there, nothing too crazy. Issue causing Elemental Blast from fusion of elements to trigger Storm Frenzy. Just small fixes. Lava Beam to not benefit from Storm Frenzy. Resolved an issue causing Thunderstrike reward to not trigger from Lava Beam. These are all basically just little fixes to finish out here. Nothing too crazy. Resolved an issue causing Ice Fury, the aura to be hidden so you can actually see the stacks now, which was a thing that had worked previously before. And then there was apparently an issue with Earthquake Overloads, the damage being higher than intended. I don't know how much higher it was than it was supposed to be, but that could or could not be relevant. I'm not sure exactly how much higher it was. So, another drink of water. My voice is, my mouth is really dry today. All right. So, those are the big changes to Elemental. Moving up to the actual hero tree changes, the big things here are fairly small on the Farseer front. Not going to bother too much with this. It's just like a slight change to our survivability, making it slightly better, increasing that the max health you gain from your Nature's Guardian. Nature's Guardian being where is it over here? This right here increases it by 10%. So it'll be instead of 35%, or instead of 30%, it'll be 40%, because I think it's 35 with the talent. So this will be, instead of 5%, it'll be 10%, taking us up to 40%. So slightly better there. And then the cooldown on that will be slightly better. It'll be 15 seconds. Which, it was already one of the weakest defensives given in any hero tree, so it definitely needed a little bit more. That's not a lot, but I guess it's something. Farseer's Elemental Blast damage increased by 20%. I'm pretty sure everyone is expecting this to be the Ancestors Elemental Shaman, or the Ancestors Elemental Blast to increase by 20%. Either way, not a huge percentage of damage. If we go back to beta, if I went to, even in this Dawnbreaker 10 that I did, Elemental Blast damage from Ancestors is very low, 1.6% of its overall, so that is what's getting increased by 20%. Not a huge difference in damage, just a slight buff there. Now, the big changes here, Arc Discharge has already been, and this is for Stormbringer, by the way, Arc Discharge has already been nerfed once before. Arc Discharge used to have 3 charges, now it's down to 2, and now the damage benefit of it is now at 40% instead of 75%. Arc Discharge has been chopped off at the legs at this point. It was by far, in my opinion, the most fun talent of any of the hero trees that we had access to, and it's getting less and less fun by the moment. Less charges, less damage. Unfortunate. It does still give you 2 instant cast Chain Lightnings, which is what it does, instead of 3, which is unfortunate, but still at least somewhat interesting. It's still definitely worthy to pick up for Mythic Plus if you're playing a Stormbringer build for sure, but it is once again nerfed. And then 2 fixes that just make it actually affected, the damage for Awakened Storms and Tempest actually being affected by Nature's Fury. Nature's Fury, just a very small change here. Nature's Fury is this talent right here. It took me a while to find it, so that's the edit. And just, it wasn't being affected by those at the moment. Now it is. So it'll give you a little bit more damage bonus than it was before. And then the biggest change to Stormbringers in the Maelstrom cost to activate a Tempest was 400. It is now 300. So you'll have access to it a little bit more. So those are all of the big changes coming to the Elemental Shaman. What does this really mean? Again, just in summary of everything. First off, I think for Raid, it's going to bring us back down kind of in line With the rest of the specs, I don't know exactly where we're going to end up. We have some thoughts, but I'll wait on sharing that until we get something more concrete instead of just napkin math. But I do think we'll just be, the best way I can put it is we'll be in line with most of the other specs. This is probably not the last round of tuning, so, you know, don't freak out just yet. We could see buffs later, especially because of that change to the Searing Flames right there. Because of that change, I do think we will see future buffs to compensate somewhere else. Maybe they want to buff up Chain Lightning, because that's something that has not been touched in quite some time. I don't know where they're really going with this. I really hope that they don't make it so you want to take Stormbringer for Mythic Plus and Farseer for a single target, though it does look like they're trying to push it in that direction. I'm not entirely sure. It's just that Farseer does not have the damage and the profile of damage to really push you into Mythic Plus. It does feel very single target oriented, and Stormbringer definitely feels more AoE oriented, but what you don't want to have is a situation where, sure, you can do really good AoE damage in this spec or in this build, but then you're not going to have any single target damage. That's a terrible place to be, or vice versa. You don't really want to be in those situations where you can only fulfill one type of niche. You want to be able to do everything well, especially in Mythic Plus. You don't want to have to overcommit to just doing AoE and then have completely awful single target. We don't really know if that's where this is headed quite yet. There's still more things to see out of this, because we haven't actually gotten the chance to get our hands on it. As soon as we do, and we have enough data to see how it goes, we can give some feedback on it from there, but we need to see it and actually get our hands on it first. So as soon as these things go live, I will obviously be trying to test it out, as I'm sure a lot of other people will, and kind of go from there. So the big takeaways, again, Mythic Plus is the dawn of a new day, and it's yet to be seen how good/bad, probably mostly on the bad side if you're only concerned about damage, which I totally understand if you are, but from a playstyle perspective, maybe there's a silver lining there if you actually want to cast AoE spells in AoE. I know that's crazy, but maybe Chain Lightning will have some sort of a comeback for Mythic Plus, and maybe it'll be worth it, maybe it'll be good. Maybe Stormbringer will be put in a place where it actually will be interesting to use and won't be so heavily nerfed, because I don't think that they've really tuned it anywhere near appropriately for Elemental. It feels like all of these changes are kind of aimed at the fact that it was doing extremely good for Enhance, and they're trying to bring that in line first. So again, really just hold on to your hats right now. I know it feels like it's very easy to just quickly whip out the, you know, Blizzard hates Elemental rhetoric, but let's just wait for a little bit longer and see how this actually plays out. But again, if you were really happy with the Lava Burst spam playstyle in Mythic Plus, that probably is gone with that Searing Flames change. Again, I think in Raid will be totally fine. I don't think there's anything to worry about there necessarily. Just we might not be on top anymore. That's kind of the only real thing there. So I think that's pretty much it. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments. I'm sure it's not very positive yet, but hopefully we can get some more tuning later on. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. I do have a Discord if you want to reach out to me for any reason whatsoever. If you want to ask me any questions in private, that's fine. I do stream at Twitch at twitch.tv/Ridmark, so feel free to give me a follow there if you're interested in that. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.